As soon as my daughter was born, she had a heart disease which left me devastated. So I asked my whole family, anything would be helpful towards her treatment. But they simply laughed at my face and said, "Why would we waste our money on a lost cause? Get lost." My mother said, "You can always have more, if one goes, one comes." I simply left them and started making videos and set up a GoFundMe which went viral, and after several weeks I nearly hit $750,000. I could finally save her life, and that's when my parents showed up unannounced and said, "The money you have saved up, hand it over. We will take care of it. After all, you have a sister which needs to get married for the 5th time." When I said, "No, it's for my daughter's future," my dad simply stood up and snatched the phone from my hand and left. But they had no idea what I had planned for all of them. The fluorescent lights in the NICU burned my eyes, but I couldn't look away from the tiny chest rising and falling behind the incubator glass. Emma had been born 3 hours ago, and already the doctors were using words like congenital and defect and urgent intervention required. My husband Jacob stood beside me, his hand trembling in mine as we listened to Dr. Richardson explain that our daughter had tetralogy of Fallot, a complex heart condition requiring immediate surgery and years of follow-up care. The initial surgery alone will cost around $200,000, Dr. Richardson said, her voice gentle but clinical. And that's just the beginning. She'll need multiple procedures as she grows. Jacob worked as a middle school teacher. I was a freelance graphic designer. Our insurance would cover some of it, but the gap between what we had and what we needed felt like an ocean I couldn't swim across. That night, after Jacob fell into an exhausted sleep in the uncomfortable hospital chair, I made a list of everyone who might help us. My parents lived in a sprawling 5-bedroom house in Connecticut that my father had paid off decades ago. My older sister Vanessa had married into money. My younger brother Kyle ran a successful car dealership. My aunt Patricia owned 3 rental properties. Surely family meant something when a baby's life hung in the balance. I called my mother the next morning. Her voice was bright and cheerful until I explained why Emma hadn't come home yet. "A heart problem? Well, that's unfortunate," she said, the way someone might comment on a rainy forecast. "But surely the hospital has programs for this sort of thing. Mom, we need help. Anything you could contribute would mean everything to us." The silence stretched out for several seconds. Then I heard my father's voice in the background, asking what I wanted. My mother must have put me on speaker because suddenly his booming voice filled my ear. "You're asking us for money? For some risky medical procedure that probably won't even work? Dad, she's your granddaughter. She's just a baby. Why would we waste our money on a lost cause?" His words hit me like a physical blow. "Get lost." I heard Vanessa's voice chiming in from somewhere nearby, apparently visiting my parents that morning. "Honestly, Sarah, you've always been so dramatic. Babies die every day." My mother's final words before hanging up carved themselves into my memory with acid precision. "You can always have more. If one goes, one comes. Nature has a way of working these things out." I sat there holding my silent phone, feeling something fundamental break inside my chest. Jacob found me like that 20 minutes later, tears dried on my face, staring at nothing. When I told him what my family had said, his jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. "Then we do this ourselves," he said. Kyle sent a text message later that day, "Heard about your situation. Tough break. Can't help though, just bought a new boat." Aunt Patricia didn't even respond. Vanessa sent a gift basket with cheap chocolates and a card that read "Thinking of you during this difficult time" in generic cursive script. Emma underwent her first surgery at 6 days old. I held her in the pre-op area, memorizing every detail of her perfect tiny face, terrified I might never see her open her eyes again. The surgery took 8 hours. Dr. Richardson emerged looking exhausted but satisfied, telling us Emma had made it through like a fighter. The relief nearly drove me to my knees, but the hospital billing department didn't care about our emotional state. They cared about payment plans and outstanding balances. We maxed out 3 credit cards in the first month. Jacob picked up tutoring jobs in the evenings. I worked until 2 or 3 in the morning, taking every design project I could find, no matter how small or tedious. We sold my car. We sold Jacob's guitar collection that he'd been building since high school. We ate rice and beans for dinner most nights. None of it was enough. Emma came home after 3 weeks in the hospital. She was so fragile, covered in healing incisions, hooked up to monitors that beeped if her oxygen levels dropped. I barely slept, watching her breathe, counting each heartbeat, terrified every moment that we'd lose her because we couldn't afford what came next. One evening, while Emma slept in her bassinet and Jacob was at a tutoring session, I found myself scrolling through social media. A woman I'd gone to college with had posted about raising money for her dog's emergency surgery through videos documenting the journey. The campaign had raised $12,000 in a week. I looked over at Emma, at the medical bills stacked on our kitchen table, at the future stretching out before us filled with surgeries and expenses we couldn't meet. I'd always been camera shy, but desperation has a way of obliterating self-consciousness. I set up my phone on a stack of books, pressed record, and started talking. I talked about the moment Emma was born and the joy that had lasted exactly 3 hours before turning into terror. I talked about what the doctors had said, about the surgeries she would need, about how she already fought harder than anyone I'd ever known. I talked about my family's response, voice breaking as I repeated my mother's words. I showed the medical bills without revealing personal information. I introduced Emma, still sleeping, her tiny chest rising and falling with the determination that defined her short life so far. "I'm not good at asking for help," I said to the camera, wiping my eyes. "But I'm asking now. Anything you can give, even $1, even just sharing this video, it all matters. It all helps save my daughter's life." I set up a GoFundMe account and posted the video on every platform I had. Then I went to check on Emma and tried not to hope too hard. The first donation came in at 11 that night. $20 from someone I'd never heard of, with a message, "Your daughter is beautiful. Praying for her," I cried reading it. By morning, there were 30 more donations, totaling $400. It felt like a miracle. I made another video thanking everyone, showing how much each contribution meant. Something about the authenticity must have resonated. People started sharing the videos. A parenting blogger with a large following posted about Emma's story. A local news station reached out for an interview. I said yes to everything, swallowing my pride and my privacy, because Emma's life mattered more than my comfort. The donations started pouring in faster. $1,000. $5,000. $10,000. I made videos updating everyone on Emma's progress, showing her tiny smiles, the way she grabbed Jacob's finger with surprising strength. People invested in her story because I let them see the reality of it, both the fear and the hope. I showed the difficult moments when she struggled to eat, when her oxygen levels dropped and alarms screamed. I showed the better days when she seemed to grow stronger, when her cardiologist said she was exceeding expectations. $20,000. $50,000. The numbers climbed higher than I'd ever imagined possible. Complete strangers were funding my daughter's future, giving pieces of their own lives to save hers. I read every comment, every message of encouragement. Some people shared their own stories of sick children, of medical nightmares, of the helplessness that comes from loving someone you can't fix. Others simply said they were rooting for Emma, that they checked for updates every day, that she'd become important to them even though they'd never meet her. 3 months after starting the campaign, the GoFundMe balance hit $750,000. I sat staring at the number, unable to process that this was real. Emma's next surgery was scheduled in 4 weeks. We could afford it. We could afford the ones after that. We could set money aside for her future care, for emergencies, for the life she deserved to live. The weight that had been crushing my chest since her birth finally lifted enough that I could take a full breath. Jacob came home from work that afternoon and found me crying over the laptop. He panicked until I showed him the screen, and then he was crying too, holding me in the middle of our cramped kitchen while Emma made her usual gurgling sounds from her swing. "People are good," I whispered. "Even when your own family isn't, people are good." We spent that evening planning. The surgery was scheduled at Boston Children's Hospital, one of the best cardiac programs in the country. We'd need to stay there for at least 2 weeks. Jacob would take family leave. From work. We could actually afford decent lodging instead of sleeping in the hospital waiting room. The crushing anxiety that had defined every moment since Emma's birth began to ease, replaced by something fragile but real, hope. The doorbell rang 3 weeks later on a Saturday morning while I was feeding Emma. Jacob answered it, and I heard his confused greeting followed by my mother's voice, loud and imperious as always. "Well, don't just stand there, invite us in." My father's heavy footsteps followed her into our living room. I looked up from Emma's bottle to see both my parents standing there as if they had every right to be in our home. Behind them came Vanessa, dressed expensively as always, looking around our modest apartment with barely concealed disdain. I carefully set Emma's bottle on the coffee table next to my phone and the diaper bag. "Hello, Sarah," my mother said, her tone suggesting I should be grateful for her presence. "We heard about your little fundraising success. Very clever of you, exploiting people's emotions like that." My father sat down on our couch without being invited, spreading his arms across the back like he owned the place. "The money you have saved up, hand it over. We'll take care of it." I set Emma's bottle down carefully, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Excuse me?" Vanessa examined her manicured nails. "Come on, Sarah. You can't be trusted to manage that much money. You'll waste it on unnecessary procedures and emotional decisions. The family should control those funds." "After all," my mother added, settling into the armchair, "you have a sister who needs to get married for the 5th time. The wedding alone will cost at least $100,000. Vanessa deserves a proper ceremony after that unfortunate situation with Marcus. The divorce wasn't my fault, Vanessa snapped. He was intimidated by my success. Right, my father said. So obviously, we need access to those funds. Family money should be used for family purposes. I looked at Jacob, who stood near the door with his arms crossed, his face white with fury. Then I looked back at my parents, at my sister who'd sent a cheap gift basket when my daughter was fighting for her life, at these people who shared my blood but nothing else that mattered. The money is for Emma's medical care, I said quietly. For her future. For her life. My father's expression hardened. Don't be selfish, Sarah. You've always been the difficult one. This family has needs. Your family? My daughter is my family. You made it clear you're not part of ours when you told me to let her die. My mother waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't be so dramatic. We never said that exactly. Mom, you said I could always have more babies. You said if one goes, one comes. You called my daughter a lost cause. Vanessa rolled her eyes. You're never going to let that go, are you? We were being realistic. The survival rates for those hard things aren't great. Get out, Jacob said from the doorway, his voice shaking. Get out of our home right now. My father stood up, his face reddening. We're not leaving without what we came for. That money belongs to the family. No, I said firmly. It's for my daughter's future. My father moved faster than I expected for a man his age. He crossed the room and snatched my phone from where it sat on the coffee table next to Emma's diaper bag. I jumped up, but he was already heading for the door. Consider this a family loan, he said. We'll transfer the funds to a proper account where they can be managed responsibly. That phone is password protected, I called after him. You can't access anything. He paused at the door, his smile unpleasant. Vanessa works in tech consulting, Sarah. She'll figure it out. We'll be in touch about how we'll distribute the funds appropriately. They left. Jacob immediately grabbed his phone to call the police, but I stopped him. Wait. Sarah, they just stole your phone. They're trying to steal Emma's medical fund. I know, I said, sitting down and pulling Emma into my arms. She looked up at me with her serious blue eyes, completely unaware of what had just happened. But they have no idea what I had planned for all of them. Jacob stared at me. What are you talking about? I hadn't wanted to tell him because I wasn't sure I'd go through with it. But the moment my father had walked out with my phone, the last hesitation had evaporated. I've been documenting everything since they first refused to help. Every text message, every voicemail, every interaction. I have Kyle's text about buying a boat instead of helping. I recorded the phone call with Mom the day Emma was born. I've saved everything. Why? Because I knew they'd come eventually. I looked down at Emma, stroking her soft hair. I knew that the moment we had something they wanted, they'd show up pretending they'd cared all along. So I prepared. Jacob sat down beside me. What's on that phone they took? Nothing they can use. Everything important is backed up to the cloud with two-factor authentication. The GoFundMe account isn't accessible from that phone anyway, it requires additional verification. They'll get into the phone eventually and find family photos, some work files, basic apps. Nothing that matters. So they just stole a phone for nothing. They stole a phone, threatened us, admitted they want to take Emma's medical fund for Vanessa's 5th wedding, and did it all in front of witnesses. I looked at him. You heard everything, right? Every word. Good. I reached for Jacob's phone on the armrest where he'd left it. So did this. I opened the recording app we'd both installed months ago to capture Emma's milestones and important moments. We'd set it up on both our phones so either of us could document her progress. I'd started the recording the moment I'd heard my mother's voice at the door. 23 minutes of crystal clear audio documenting everything my family had said and done. Jacob's eyes widened. You recorded them? I recorded them in our home, where we have every legal right to document what happens. And now I'm going to make one more video. I spent the rest of that day crafting the most important video I'd ever make. But first, I needed to secure everything properly. Jacob and I drove to our bank that afternoon, Emma strapped safely in her car seat, and met with a financial advisor named Margaret Chen who specialized in medical trusts for children with chronic health conditions. You're doing the right thing, Margaret said as she reviewed our documentation. With a special needs trust, these funds can only be accessed for Emma's qualified medical expenses. Even a court order couldn't redirect them for other purposes. The process took 3 hours. We provided all of Emma's medical records, the GoFundMe terms of service showing donor intent, projections from Dr. Richardson about future care costs, and documentation of every expense we'd already incurred. Margaret created an ironclad structure that named Jacob and me as co-trustees, with our lawyer Frank Mendoza as a backup trustee if anything happened to us. The money would be there for Emma's surgeries, medications, therapy, medical equipment, and nothing else. Your family can try whatever they want legally, Margaret explained. But this trust is protected under federal law. The funds are designated for a specific beneficiary's medical care. Nobody can touch them. I felt a profound sense of relief signing those documents. Every dollar that strangers had donated out of pure compassion would go exactly where they'd intended. I took photos of the signed paperwork, Emma babbling happily in Jacob's arms, completely unaware that we just secured her future. Back home, I began assembling the video. I didn't rush it. Each piece of evidence needed context, each moment carefully explained so viewers would understand the full scope of what had happened. I started with a brief recap of Emma's condition and the original fundraising campaign, thanking everyone who'd made her survival possible. Then I shifted tone. 3 months ago, when Emma was born, I called my parents begging for help. Any amount would have mattered. Here's what they said. I played the audio from that first phone call, my mother's voice crystal clear: "You can always have more. If one goes, one comes." My father's dismissive "Why would we waste our money on a lost cause? Get lost." The words sounded even worse played back. I could see how they'd land with viewers who donated their hard-earned money to save Emma's life. I showed Kyle's text message about his new boat. I displayed the generic sympathy card from Vanessa, zooming in on the mass-produced cursive that had probably come free with the basket. For 3 months, not one member of my biological family visited Emma in the hospital, I continued. Not during her first surgery when we didn't know if she'd survive. Not during the complications when she struggled to breathe. Not once. I showed visitor logs from the hospital that Jacob had thought to request, highlighting the names of friends, co-workers, even my old college roommate who'd driven 6 hours to sit with us for an afternoon. My family's names appeared exactly 0 times. Then I showed the doorbell footage from yesterday. The video quality was excellent. We'd upgraded our security system after a package theft in our building. My father's face was clearly visible as he snatched my phone. Vanessa's dismissive expression as she looked around our apartment was perfectly captured. The audio picked up every word about the 5th wedding, about taking control of the funds, about the family's needs. "These are the people who told me my daughter wasn't worth saving," I said to the camera, holding Emma close. "These are the people who laughed when I begged for help. And now they want to take the money that strangers donated out of pure kindness and use it for a 5th wedding for my sister who never even visited Emma in the hospital." I explained the medical trust in detail, showing the signed documents with sensitive information redacted. "Every penny you donated is legally protected. It can only be used for Emma's healthcare. My parents can't access it. My sister can't access it. It's going exactly where you intended it to go." The video ran 18 minutes long. I watched it 3 times before posting, checking every detail, making sure nothing could be misconstrued or used against us. Jacob watched it once and said quietly, "They're going to lose their minds." "Good," I replied, my finger hovering over the upload button. They should have thought about consequences before they showed up demanding money meant for a sick baby. I posted it at 7 p.m. on a Sunday evening, prime social media time. Then I put my phone down, fed Emma her bottle, and tried to pretend my heart wasn't racing with anxiety and anticipation. The first 100 comments came within minutes. Expressions of outrage, disbelief, support. People who donated sharing their fury that anyone would try to steal funds from a child's medical care. By 8 p.m., the video had 5,000 views. By 9 p.m., 20,000. I watched the numbers climb with a strange detachment, as if this were happening to someone else. A producer from a local news station called at 9:30. "Ms. Henderson? This is Bradley Cooper from Channel 7 News. We'd like to do a story about your situation. Would you be available for an interview tomorrow?" I agreed. Then came calls from 3 other stations, 2 national news websites, and a producer from a daytime talk show. I said yes to everything, understanding that visibility meant protection. The more people knew about this, the harder it would be for my family to spin their own narrative or retaliate against us legally. Jacob ordered pizza for dinner because neither of us could focus on cooking. We ate it sitting on the floor of Emma's room while she slept, watching the view count climb past 100,000. The comments section had become a digital pitchfork mob, with people detective work their way to identifying my father's construction business, Vanessa's tech consulting firm, even Kyle's car dealership. "Should we tell them to stop?" Jacob asked, reading a particularly harsh review someone had left on my father's business page. "Stop what?" "Leaving honest feedback about how the owner treats his family?" "They're not lying." I felt a twinge of something that might have been guilt, but it evaporated when I looked at Emma. She was alive because of strangers' kindness, despite my family's cruelty. If there were consequences for that cruelty, they'd earned them. By midnight, the video had 300,000 views. I did a live follow-up video answering common questions viewers had posted. Yes, Emma was doing well. Yes, the trust was legally binding. Yes, we'd filed a police report about the phone theft. No, we hadn't heard from my family since they'd left with the phone. Yes, I had copies of everything they'd taken. No, I didn't feel guilty about exposing them. Someone asked if I'm worried about burning bridges with my family. I read from the comments. Here's my answer: they burned those bridges themselves when they told me to let my daughter die. They poured gasoline on them when they showed up demanding her medical money for a wedding. I'm just making sure everyone knows where the fire started. The live video was watched by 40,000 people in real time. The support was overwhelming. People sent messages sharing their own stories of family betrayal, medical hardship, the cruelty they'd faced from people who should have protected them. I read as many as I could, thanking people for their vulnerability and solidarity. Tuesday morning brought the first wave of news coverage. Channel 7 ran a 6-minute segment during their morning show, featuring an interview with me and Jacob, footage of Emma playing with her toys, and clips from my videos. The anchors expressed obvious disgust at my family's behavior. By noon, the story had been picked up by regional outlets across the Northeast. That afternoon, the national coverage began. A major news website published an article titled "Family Demands Toddler's Medical Fund for Sister's Fifth Wedding." Another site went with "Parents Who Called Baby a Lost Cause Try to Steal Her Life-Saving GoFundMe." Each article linked to my videos, driving millions more views. My phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. High school friends reaching out to offer support. Former coworkers expressing shock at what my family had done. Even my old pediatrician sent a message saying she was following Emma's story and cheering for her recovery. Conspicuously absent, anyone from my biological family. The silence from their end was absolute. No calls, no texts, no attempts at explanation or damage control. I imagined them huddled together, probably hiring lawyers, definitely panicking as their reputations crumbled in real time. Wednesday brought the consequences I'd anticipated. A local business reporter published an investigation into my father's construction company, interviewing former clients who described his aggressive billing practices and poor quality work. One woman claimed he'd overcharged her by $15,000 for renovations that fell apart within months. Another man said my father had threatened to sue him for leaving an honest negative review. The article painted a picture of someone who'd been cutting corners and bullying clients for years, with Emma's situation being just the latest example of his character. Vanessa's employer, a mid-sized tech consulting firm, released a statement saying they were investigating allegations of an employee's attempt to access protected funds and had placed said employee on administrative leave. I knew from friends in the industry that administrative leave was usually corporate speak for "we're gathering documentation before we fire you." Kyle's car dealership faced protests. A group of about 20 people stood outside with signs reading "Don't buy from people who abandon sick babies and family values." The local newspaper photographed them, running a story about how social media outrage was affecting local businesses. Kyle gave a statement claiming he'd been misrepresented and had always supported his niece, which only made people angrier since there was video evidence proving otherwise. I paused, looking directly into the lens. I'm not making this video for revenge, though I won't pretend it doesn't feel good to expose the truth. I'm making it so everyone who donated knows that their money is protected. It's going exactly where you intended, toward Emma's care, toward her future, toward giving her the life she deserves. No one is taking that from her. I've already moved all the funds to a specialized medical trust that can only be used for Emma's healthcare expenses. My parents can't touch it. My sister can't touch it. It's protected by law and by the incredible generosity of people who cared about a baby they'd never met. I posted the video that evening. By midnight, it had 300,000 views. By morning, it had cleared 2 million. The comments section exploded with outrage on Emma's behalf. People tagged news outlets. Someone identified my father's business from background details in the doorbell footage and left reviews detailing what he'd done. Vanessa's company started getting calls asking if they employed someone who stole from sick babies. My phone, the new one I'd already set up with my backed up data, rang constantly. News outlets wanted interviews. People wanted to donate more money to Emma's fund, even though I'd closed it and explained the money was secured. Total strangers offered to testify on our behalf if we pursued legal action. The story went viral in a way I'd never imagined, spreading across platforms, making headlines, turning my family into symbols of everything people hated about selfishness and greed. My mother called from my father's phone 3 days later. I answered on speaker so Jacob could hear. "How could you?" She hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" I told the truth, "Mom. That's all I did. Your father's business has lost 6 clients. Vanessa got suspended from her job pending an investigation. Kyle's dealership has people protesting outside. You've destroyed everything." "You did this," I said calmly. You destroyed yourselves the moment you decided Emma wasn't worth your time or money. You destroyed yourselves when you showed up demanding money for a wedding instead of a child's life. I just made sure people knew who you really are. Vanessa grabbed the phone. You vindictive little witch. I'm going to sue you for defamation. For telling the truth? With audio recordings and evidence? Good luck with that. I've already consulted with 3 lawyers who confirmed everything I posted is factual and legally protected speech. We're family, my mother sobbed in the background. How can you treat family this way? You taught me how, I said quietly. You taught me that family means nothing when you told me to let my daughter die. You taught me that blood doesn't matter when you laughed at me for trying to save her. You taught me that sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones who hurt you most. I'm just a good student, Mom. I hung up. Aunt Patricia tried calling next, claiming she'd wanted to help all along but had been confused about the situation. I blocked her number. Kyle sent a text saying I had always been jealous of his success and this was my way of dragging him down. I deleted it without responding. They weren't worth my energy anymore. Emma's second surgery happened a week later at Boston Children's Hospital. Dr. Richardson and her team worked for 12 hours, reconstructing parts of Emma's heart, giving her the chance at a normal life. I sat in the waiting room with Jacob, surrounded by other families fighting their own battles, and felt the strange peace that comes from knowing you've done everything possible. Emma pulled through surgery even stronger than before. The nurses called her their little warrior. Dr. Richardson said her recovery was remarkable, that she had the fighting spirit of someone much older. I made a video update from Emma's hospital room, showing her hooked up to monitors but breathing steadily, her color better than it had been since birth. Thousands of people who'd followed her journey celebrated with us, leaving comments full of joy and relief and love for a baby they knew only through a screen. Aunt Patricia broke the family's silence on Thursday with an angry voicemail. You selfish, vindictive little brat. Do you have any idea what you've done? Your father might lose his business. Vanessa can't find work anywhere. Kyle's wife is talking about divorce because of the embarrassment. You've destroyed this entire family because you couldn't take a joke. I saved the voicemail and posted it with commentary. This is my aunt claiming that telling me to let my daughter die was a joke. This is the same aunt who owns 3 rental properties but couldn't spare $100 for her great-niece's surgery. This is what gaslighting sounds like. That clip went even more viral than the original video. Mental health professionals commented on the textbook manipulation tactics. Therapists made reaction videos breaking down the abusive language. The phrase couldn't take a joke started trending on social media, with people sharing their own stories of family members using humor as an excuse for cruelty. Friday morning, I received a certified letter from a law firm representing my parents and Vanessa. They were threatening to sue me for defamation, emotional distress, and tortious interference with their business relationships. The letter demanded I remove all videos and posts, issue a public apology, and pay $50,000 in damages. I forwarded it to Frank Mendoza, our lawyer, who called me within an hour. Sarah, this is a garbage lawsuit. Everything you posted is true and documented. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation. They have no case. So I don't need to take anything down? Absolutely not. In fact, I'm going to draft a response that makes it very clear if they proceed with this frivolous lawsuit, we'll countersue for harassment and abusive process. We'll also subpoena all their financial records to show they had the means to help Emma and chose not to. I guarantee once they talk to a competent attorney, they'll drop this. I felt vindicated hearing Frank's confidence. I made another video showing the cease and desist letter with personal information redacted, explaining that my family was now threatening legal action because I'd told the truth about their behavior. They called my daughter a lost cause. They tried to steal her medical fund. And now they're mad that people know about it. This is who they are. The legal threat backfired spectacularly. Several actual lawyers commented on my video explaining why the lawsuit had no merit. A law professor at a local university wrote an op-ed about slap suits, strategic lawsuits against public participation, and how they're used to silence people telling uncomfortable truths. The publicity around the threatened lawsuit brought even more attention to Emma's story and my family's actions. By the end of that week, the original video had been viewed over 5 million times across various platforms. Emma's story had been covered by dozens of news outlets. My family had gone from obscure middle-class people to local symbols of selfishness and greed. And I had successfully protected every penny of Emma's medical fund while ensuring they faced real consequences for their cruelty. The investigation into Vanessa's company concluded with her termination for attempting to access protected funds and ethical violations. The official statement cited conduct unbecoming of our company values and actions incompatible with client trust. I learned through mutual connections that she'd been escorted from the building and her access to all systems immediately revoked. My father's business never recovered from the publicity. Long-term clients canceled contracts. New customers chose competitors. The local contractors association quietly removed him from their referral list. Within 3 months, he'd laid off his entire crew and was working solo jobs, a dramatic fall from the small empire he'd built over 30 years. Kyle's dealership survived, but his reputation in the community was permanently damaged. His wife did file for divorce, citing not just the embarrassment but a pattern of selfishness she'd apparently been tolerating for years. The business limped along, but the easy success he'd enjoyed evaporated as customers took their business elsewhere. My mother sent occasional emails that I never opened, subject lines pleading for forgiveness and understanding and family unity. They piled up in my inbox, unread notifications I scrolled past without a second thought. Whatever she wanted to say, I wasn't ready to hear it. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, but I felt no guilt either. They'd made their choices. They'd shown their true nature. I'd simply held up a mirror and let the world see what I'd been dealing with my entire life. Emma came home after 10 days in Boston. She was 5 months old and had already been through more than most people endure in a lifetime. But she smiled at me that first night back in our apartment, a real smile that lit up her whole face, and I knew every sleepless night, every moment of terror, every difficult decision had been worth it. The GoFundMe money, secured in the medical trust, covered Emma's remaining surgeries. She had 2 more procedures over the next 18 months, each one successful, each one bringing her closer to a normal childhood. Dr. Richardson said that by the time Emma was 3, she'd be able to do everything other kids her age did, with only regular cardiology checkups to monitor her progress. I kept making videos documenting Emma's journey, but they evolved from desperate pleas for help into celebrations of milestones and recovery. People who donated stayed invested in her story, cheering when she took her first steps, celebrating her first birthday, watching her grow from a fragile newborn into a thriving toddler. The community that had formed around saving her life became a permanent part of our world, a reminder that chosen family matters more than biological obligation. Jacob and I moved to a bigger apartment when Emma was 2. We paid off our credit cards. We started saving for her college fund. Life wasn't perfect, we still worried about her health, still had moments of fear when she got sick or seemed too tired. But the crushing weight of impossible debt was gone, replaced by the manageable concerns of normal parenthood. Emma's 3rd birthday party was small, just a few close friends and their children, held in our local park on a perfect September afternoon. Emma wore a princess dress and a crown, running around with the other kids, laughing with the unself-conscious joy of a child who didn't remember being too sick to play. I watched her blow out her candles, Jacob's arm around my shoulders, and felt the gratitude that had become my constant companion. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost declined, but something made me answer. "Sarah?" My mother's voice, older and uncertain. "It's your mother." I walked away from the party, finding a quiet spot under a tree. "What do you want?" I wanted to wish Emma a happy birthday. "She's 3 today, isn't she?" "She is." A long pause. "I saw the photos you posted. She looks healthy." "She is. The surgeries worked. She's going to be fine." Another pause, longer this time. "I've been going to therapy. Trying to understand why I said those things, why I acted that way. The therapist says I have issues with control and empathy, that I never learned how to put others before myself." "That's good," I said neutrally. "Self-awareness is important. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how I treated you, how I treated Emma. For choosing money and status and stupid pride over my granddaughter's life. I'm sorry." I watched Emma across the park, chocolate cake smeared across her face, chasing butterflies with her friends. My perfect, healthy, beautiful daughter who existed because strangers had been kinder than family. "I appreciate you saying that," I told my mother. "I hope therapy helps you. But Emma and I have a good life now. We have people who love us. We don't have room for people who treated us like we were disposable." "I understand," she said quietly. "Will you at least keep the door open?" "Not now, but maybe someday." I thought about it, about forgiveness and grudges and the weight of carrying hate. "Maybe someday," I said finally. "But that day isn't today, and it probably isn't tomorrow either. If you really want to change, do it for yourself, not because you expect me to welcome you back." "That's fair," she whispered. "Happy birthday to Emma. And Sarah. Thank you. For saving her when we didn't. You're a better mother than I ever was." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there for a moment, processing the conversation, feeling the complexity of hurt that never fully heals but sometimes scars over enough to stop bleeding. Jacob found me under the tree. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, taking his hand. "Everything's okay." We walked back to the party together. Emma saw us and ran over, her arms outstretched, yelling "Mama. Daddy." With the pure enthusiasm that defined her personality. I scooped her up, felt her healthy heartbeat against my chest, and knew that every choice I'd made had been the right one. Sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you're born into. Sometimes the kindness of strangers outweighs the cruelty of blood relatives. Sometimes justice looks like protecting what matters most and letting the consequences fall where they may. Emma kissed my cheek, leaving chocolate frosting behind, and whispered "love you, Mama," with the absolute certainty of a child who'd never doubted she was wanted. I held her close, surrounded by friends who'd become family, and felt the weight of the past 3 years settle into something I could finally carry without breaking. The revenge I'd taken wasn't about destroying my parents or siblings. It was about building a life they couldn't touch, protecting a daughter they dismissed, and proving that sometimes the best payback is simply succeeding despite everyone who said you'd fail. Emma was alive and thriving. We were happy. We were free from people who'd only ever brought us pain. The rest was just noise, fading into the background as Emma's laughter filled the afternoon air,